Welcome everybody to finally a new edition of Shasie's World Live. They have not been consistent lately. My work schedule hours have been changing a little bit, and so I'm still just trying to figure that out. But I am still at least going to try to do these weekly. I just don't know what day, so I stopped saying every Sunday at 5. So it's going to be weekly at some point. But I just had to get on here and talk about the state of events of what happened in this country last week and kind of talk about the things that led up to it. And I was originally just going to have a monologue with myself. My right one's getting on my nerves. But I was like, I think it's always more interesting when I have a guest on the show. And Clarence and we always talk about the stuff that's going on in politics. And he even had me on one of his podcasts one time with a conservative one time, just kind of going back. It was a peaceful conversation, but just going back and forth with our opinions. And so I know he's someone who follows this along as well. So I wanted to go ahead and bring him on the show. We kind of discussed what happened pretty much pre-election, post-election, everything leading up to the 6th of January. That was so ridiculous and crazy. So I'll go ahead and bring him on now.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. Thank you for bringing me into your world.
Woo, Shasie's World Live.
Yeah.
So go ahead. You know how I like to call you Clarence. I know you prefer Patrick, but I just love the name Clarence. You want to know why?
What's up?
Because one of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life, and the angel in there is called Clarence.
Okay. I haven't seen that.
Oh my gosh, with Jimmy Stewart, it's so great. Yeah.
The only Clarence I know is from this cartoon and from 227.
227, is that your hood? I don't know what that means.
You never heard of 227?
Hmm.
Oh man, yeah. Watch 227. Is a guy named Clarence. They call him Clarence the So Fine.
Cool. Well, I like the name Clarence, but so yeah, go ahead and tell my readers, my audience, a little bit about yourself. What you do, what do you like to do for fun? Just a little intro.
Okay. Well, like she said, my name is Clarence Patrick Francis, also known as Doc by a lot of people that's known me from the past, long time ago, back in junior high. So they may call me Doc still, but I'm from Houston. I went to college. Actually, I went to grad school at TSU, undergrad at Baylor, majored in finance. And ever since I got out of college, been in the financial aid, education, enrollment field for the last, I'd say about 15 plus years. So I have a lot of knowledge in that. Most recently, I started a nonprofit last year with a partner of mine named Lloyd Lindley. It's called LAMP Services. LAMP stands for Living a Meaningful Purpose. So we're really excited about that. I think that's about it. Anything else?
No, I think you covered it all. I still claim Clarence over Doc.
All right.
So yeah, let's just kind of get into it. Thank you for sharing with us. I like that you have their finance background and everything. I'm definitely going to be coming to you for some of my, new financial living stuff, my new budget life.
Oh yeah. I know this is off topic, but I got something big coming up with the financial side. Of course, during the pandemic, everybody's kind of putting their mind down together and seeing what you can come up with your own business. So I got something good coming out as far as financial assistance and school services and education services. So be on the lookout for that.
No, I think that's exactly what people need to hear, especially in this time. I think a lot of people weren't prepared. A lot of people obviously weren't prepared to lose their jobs or, having a side hustle, or just having that money stash, for this type of condition, because no one really expected it. They always tell you to save, but it's hard. So I think that's great. And what's the website for LAMP again? It's so I can put it on here so everybody can see that as well.
The website for LAMP is www.lampitup.org.
Lampitup.org.
Lampitup.org.
I've been working with Clarence and Lloyd for a couple of years now on some of their activities. Not working with, but just trying to support them and going to their activities. They do a lot of great stuff around the community, toy drives, sock drives for the homeless. So it's definitely something that you guys want to log on to, stay on top of what they're doing around the community. And I also just have to say, my apartment looks pretty bland right now. We are in the transition of taking down holiday decorations. So this is what it is. This transition period.
Uh-oh.
But let's get into what, we're here to talk about tonight, because I just, so I'm working at the Container Store now. So at my old job, I was kind of able to be on my phone a little bit more and like keep up with what things were happening during the day. And I had one 30-minute break. It was Wednesday, 30-minute break on Wednesday at 3. So I just, randomly grabbed my phone and I was like, what the hell is going on? I had no idea, because I was like in this bubble of working. And I get off work and I just see like shit had hit the fan. So before we get into that, though, I just kind of want to talk about what led up to this moment of what we saw on the 6th and what your thoughts on it. So,
right.
I think this pretty much started. This was since 2016, ever since Trump was elected president.
Yeah.
And that's my feel. What were your opinions on the state of the politics in America from the time he got elected to what we saw last Wednesday, kind of?
Well, yeah. So January 6th, right? That's when it all went down at Capitol Hill. And similar to you, I'm working at home for the most part. Sometimes I go in on location to work. But I was just getting these messages, notifications like something's going down. And I heard about it. So it really wasn't a surprise, which brings me back to what you just said. It started back in 2016. That's why I'm like, this is really not a surprise, because if you look back prior to Donald Trump being elected, when he was holding rallies to become president, a lot of these things were going on already. There were people at these rallies acting really crazy, people fighting with a lot of derogatory signs and basically just being, very obnoxious while he was running for president. So before he even became president, all these things were actually happening. It just came to a boiling point on January 6th. And just like Donald Trump said, remember this day. So he's the one that I feel he encouraged these things to happen by putting the words out there, and the people that are following him are the ones that are they're really sheep, and they're taking action and kind of following up on what he's doing.
No, I mean, I 1,000% agree with you. I mean, all the warning signs were there way before that man got elected. Like you said, his whole entire campaign. Like, I don't know if you had a chance to watch that documentary on him yet on Netflix, but they said, I guess there was like an ex-wrestler or something who he was really like kind of obsessed with, who ran a campaign to become like the mayor of a city. And he did kind of like a boisterous campaign of like, being kind of saying politicians suck, and that he was going to be this new politician and sparkling and stuff. And he was like, I'm going to run a campaign like that when I run for president. And he didn't even know. He was like a Democrat at one point, and then he basically picked the party where he thought he could get elected. So I don't even really think he even really believed in the Republican ideals. I think he just picked the one party that would be his best way to get into the presidency. Thank God it wasn't the Democrats, because that would be so embarrassed. Yeah, left out there. But I mean, everything leading up to it, the campaigns, the stuff he said about women, and to see that all those women still voted for him against Hillary. I mean, I'm not going to say Hillary was the perfect candidate, but by far and wide, like, I think a lot of people who voted for Trump probably regret that decision. A lot of people I know did not revote for him in this election. So I just think he incites violence, and a lot of his supporters will say he doesn't incite anything, but there was a definite change in temperament in this country after during his campaigning, and then making statements about Muslims and Mexicans, and then there was it was almost like open season on minorities and immigrants, and they were just treated very poorly. You could see the numbers going up of like race incidents and around the country after him, and then he gets into the presidency, he doesn't denounce any of it. And my biggest issue with like leading up to this election is, I think we all knew what Trump was capable of. Like, we know Trump, like, he has not really changed. He might be a little bit more unhinged now, but he's pretty much been the same person his whole life. Mm-hmm. If you go back and look at that documentary, he can't lose. If he loses, it's somebody else's fault or something is great. That's what he'll always say. But the problem is, just kind of like Hitler, people didn't check him. People were so afraid of his followers and so afraid to fall off of the political spectrum, that they let him get away with everything that he has done as president, and now it's too late. Like, I feel like, again, like you, I wasn't surprised by the actions of the six, because I kept saying, like, there's going to be a war, there's going to be like this increased violence. I mean, I hope it doesn't come to like a crazy war. But I think what also affected it as well was the fact that these people, I do feel like a little bit like they're sheep. I know a lot of them, you know, are probably really intelligent, which is why I'm so shocked that they could believe something like this. But he went into the election saying it would be fraud if he lost. So that already just triggered this type of thinking.
Right. And I think that most of the people in the world, I would say at least 80% of the people in the world are pretty much followers. And I think the other portion are the ones that are out in the front and trying to guide and lead the direction of the masses. So when I look back at, like you said, when Donald Trump has been like this, he was at one point a Democrat, and I did not get to see the documentary on Netflix, but I did hear about that. And I've seen a lot of other videos of Donald Trump and older videos, and he's been the same person since the 70s and 80s when he was growing up. And a lot of times you got to peel back the onion and figure out or find out, okay, where did he get these characteristics from? Where did he get this from? And then you go back and find out, okay, this is his father that was doing all types of stuff that that nowadays would be considered illegal or looked down upon. But his father was also a powerful man, and he grew up in that environment where he was able to get his way. People that knew him allowed him to do things. Which is, like we may talk about later, about the privilege part. So when he's growing up, he already has money at his disposal. Money brings that power, and then that brings that power. Then he utilizes that to get what he wants or to do what he wants. And you could see it all the way throughout, from if you follow him back when he started in the real estate businesses in the late 70s, all the way up until now. And even Tupac had a quote when this was in the early 90s, and Donald Trump's name was out there. Tupac was like, if you want to be like Donald Trump, you want to step on everybody and get what you want. And another quote that he said was, fear is stronger than love. And to me, that meant that he incites fear. He puts fear into certain people, to somewhat like a bully does. And that fear makes people do things that they normally wouldn't do. So let's say there's videos of these current politicians in office now talking bad about Donald Trump and how selfish he is and what a bigot he is and this and that. Then all of a sudden their tune changes once he is elevated into power. And that's the fear. So that fear that they have of Donald Trump of, well, if I go against him, I'm going to have to suffer some repercussions, or I'm going to lose some votes, or my party is going to be split. So that fear is now making these same people that know what type of person he is, change their tune, and now they're following him and they're with him. But as you see now, it's starting to backfire because he can only hold this charade up for so long. And eventually, you know, these same politicians, they're now turning their back on him because they see that his reign is now about to be over in about another 9 or 10 days. And they're slowly breaking away from him. But we all see that it's a little bit too little too late. And you still remember, hey, you was by his side these last 4 or 5 years, and now all of a sudden the last 9-10 days you want to turn your back and now you're with us. So that's a little bit too little too late, in my opinion.
I'm 1,000% with you. It is too little too late. And it's also embarrassing, like, that these people are only comfortable doing it when they know Trump's about to lose power. Where is the backbone? Where are the spines? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I literally watched videos of Ted Cruz literally saying Donald Trump incites violence. And the next thing you know, he was so far up Trump's butt, he was doing a colonoscopy on him this whole time. And that man even talked bad about his wife. Like, where is your pride and your backbone? And I was making a mistake earlier in this year or earlier in 2020, like and lumping all Republicans together. But I mean, I may not agree with the majority of their political policies, but it really wasn't all Republicans. It was the ones who have goals to be president in the future, or the ones who just like they just live on being a senator or something. So they can't stand the thought of, like, if they turn against Trump and his followers, they won't get reelected. So they give up all of their morals. Because I looked at, we're definitely a lot like Senator McCain, Mitt Romney, like all the classic, more classier Republicans, I guess I would say, who just know, like, the Constitution of the United States of America is more important than, like, being in power. I have Republican friends that do not follow Trump. So I've been really trying hard to kind of separate, lumping the Republicans together and saying, like, the Trumplicans or the weasel ones like Cruz, because he literally is just disgusting. Lindsey Graham. Yeah, okay, Lindsey, you came out now talking about voter fraud is, it's over, but you helped spur to where we are now. So for them to backpedal at this point, after an attack on the Capitol, is like too late. Where were you a month ago? Where were you in November, December, before November, when Trump was saying mail-in ballots are going to be like all the stuff he did? And again, I know people laugh at me, and some people think I'm a little crazy when I compare this stuff to Hitler. I mean, we're not at that level yet where we're putting groups of people in gas chambers, but it's the same story. It's the one person comes to power. He's able to put propaganda out there. He put propaganda out there that Muslims are bad, Mexicans are bad, Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group too, and all this Antifa stuff, and we'll talk about that later. He got an entire group of people, the Trumplicans, what I call them, to believe in what he said. They don't want to fact check. They have Republicans in that party that were telling them as well, like, there's no voter fraud, but they refuse to believe it because the person in power, the one that they worship, Trump, is telling them another story. And this is exactly what Hitler did. And then none of his lackeys ever checked Hitler. So by the time they were like, oh, maybe we've gone too far, we're like actually killing people now. If they would turn against him, he had like a whole country. Back then. Now, the thing about our country is, like, there's still probably 80 something million of us that are like, we did not drink the Kool-Aid. So
yeah. If you go back in history, it's a lot of similarities. And I honestly, I feel like Trump is with whoever party is with him. So if like we said, that he was a Democrat, I want to say back in the 80s. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I want to say he was independent for a minute. Then he became Republican because that was the party where he felt he had the best chance to win at being the president. So I think that, right wing or whatever you want to call it, but Trumplicans or whatever, but whatever party or whatever is for him, that's where he is. And people like people who had his back, like, as you see, Vice President Mike Pence, all of a sudden Mike Pence is saying, hey, I'm standing up for the Constitution. I want to do what's right. Let's get this electoral vote done properly. I'm not going to go against the all of the decisions that's been made by the judges and the Supreme Courts over the last couple of months. Let's get this done. Joe Biden and the new Vice President Kamala Harris are going to be sworn in. Let's get this done. And Trump is like, hey, you're supposed to have my back. You're supposed to denounce this. You're supposed to block this. And because he didn't, Trump is like, okay, I don't really like you anymore. You ain't doing what I want you to do. And all the people that are pro-Trump are like, okay, well, forget Pence. We don't like him either. And it's like, yeah, initially it was like, well, Trump is not a sheep. He's not a politician. He's not a follower. But now the people that are, it's ironic because the people that are super pro-Trump, they're pretty much just sheep now, because all they're doing is listening to the words that Trump says. If he doesn't like this person, well, I don't like him either. Well, if he likes this person, well, I'm down with this person now. But they're pretty much just listening to his words and not thinking for themselves and not looking at the big picture. However, at the same time, Trump being in office and this whole tenure, the last 4 or 5 years, actually has shed a lot of light on a lot of things and brought a lot of things to light. So it's always a good and bad to things, so good thing is you can see a lot of things that were undercover that are now going on there that is being seen in the light now.
Yeah, I mean, 1,000%. Again, once agree. Just everything I'm saying, I just totally agreeing with. It's just that it's sad. Literally, these people they were Team Pence through the debates, everything. They're, the fly jokes, and they were, they were like, Kamala treated Pence terribly during the debate, like that's our man. And then like one time he wants to do something for the country and not Trump, because this is the United States of America, not the United States of Trump land. He says one thing that they don't, and that they were storming the place to ready to hang that man. Literally a month ago, they were like, Pence is our man. And it's just so sad. So, well, let's transition a little bit. So I think the climate between 2016 and 2020 has just continued to escalate with more and more tension. And it is on our side too. But there was a lot of we hate Trump rhetoric going on, and but I stand behind what I said. I don't like that man, and I've seen what he has caused for this country. And then we saw what happened on the 6th. And I don't like, one of the things I hate is I don't like sheep. I don't like people who don't think for themselves, who just drink Kool-Aid and never fact check and will turn on somebody because one person says one thing about them. And they don't bother to you like this person for 4 years, and now all of a sudden you want to hang him outside the Capitol building because he wants to follow the Constitution of the country you claim to love and be a patriot of. That's just insane to me. Where is your brain at this point?
Yeah, no loyalty at all. And I definitely wouldn't want to be a part of any organization or any group of people that are willing to turn on you just because you have a difference of opinion. Now all of a sudden, oh, you're not a part of us, and we don't like you anymore. I definitely would not want to be a part of any type of, or associated with any type of group organization like that.
Oh, for sure. I have morals. I refuse. Well, let's say, so we get to the election. So we have all this build up to the election 2020. We have Trump running around the country telling everybody that if he loses, there's going to be fraud. And the rest of us are like, okay, one, we're in a pandemic. So this is an unprecedented election. Maybe they probably had something happening during the Spanish flu and stuff, but whatever. We're talking about 2020 and us doing an election during an unprecedented pandemic. So some rules had to change. And it just seemed that there was just so many goals of the Republican Party, like the Texas Republican Party specifically, to try to have voter suppression and have all these false claims about mail-in ballots. So they just continued to spurn the idea of it being rigged, who says before something, if they lose, it's rigged? That doesn't even make sense. So if you win, it's not rigged, even though they all use the same machines and everything. But if you lost and all of a sudden the machines don't work, or if you lost in the states that you thought you were going to win, all of a sudden those states who use the same machines as all the other states, those states are rigged and they gave fake ballots and stuff like that. So it just really is telling, you literally only cared about the counties with minorities. And I'm really surprised that they would even think that the minorities, even though I'm sure some do support Trump, but after what we went through this year with BLM and his lack of caring about that, and then trying to say the BLM people are terrorists, and there's good people on both sides over the last few years, why they would even think a majority community would vote for him and not whoever the opposite is. So the fact that they only targeted counties that were minority based, minority heavy, and states where they lost, it's just so telling. Because if the whole election was rigged, wouldn't you look at all the states, because they're all kind of doing the same things? It just seems so ridiculous. So then when we get to this election, we're all looking at election night, and we've been told for weeks that it's going to take days, just because of the pandemic and people counting ballots. And so what are your thoughts on the voter fraud claims, going into it and after the election?
Yeah, well, if you go back in history, once again, you got to peel back the onion and go back in history as how things started and how did we get to where we are now. You go back in history, there's a lot of voter fraud. Black people weren't able to vote. Women weren't able to vote. And then when we did, I even went, my brother showed me some documentation of I want to say a great grandfather of mine back in the late 1800s, of course. They went to vote and they were all arrested. The judge actually found them innocent because they were trying to claim that they were voting, but you had to own a home at the time to vote. And all, he actually owned his home at the time, so he was allowed to vote, and I believe they counted his vote. Who knows? But voter fraud was going on way back in the day. We wasn't even able to vote. Then when we were allowed to vote, it was all type of blocks and restrictions of having to own land, having to be in this particular county, having to be registered here, to where, hey, I can vote, but now I can't even vote because I got so many obstacles to get through. So now, as we fast forward to 2020, and the president is saying that there's voter fraud. Well, okay, we are in a different time now where we can sit back and say, okay, everything's electronic for the most part, but due to the pandemic, now we have to do things a little bit differently, which is by mail. So we all know that. So of course, the conspiracy theory is that the Democrats have people, have unregistered voters, people voting, people that are dead, prisoners or something like that, people with felonies, different things like that are voting. And as you heard the tape, he was talking to, I believe, the attorney general in Georgia about, hey, we need 11,200 and some odd votes, and we need to find it. Where do you think you can find it? And if you don't, there might be some consequences. So just hearing all that, isn't that pretty suspicious that, okay, if you got to search that deep and go that far to try to find some fraud, and then after all of the judges, even Supreme Court judges that he has nominated into the courts, have voted against the decisions that the opinions that he's trying to claim of voter fraud. And these people are saying, no, there is no fraud. All the cases in these states that have not gone through, at some point you have to accept that, okay, it's not fraud. But like I said, the people that are following him are still holding on to that because of fear. And of course, in my opinion, the president is a narcissist, so he's not going to allow himself to lose. And if he is losing, he's going to find a reason why he lost and a justification as to why he shouldn't lose and why he should win, regardless if he lost fairly or not. He's going to find a way to show that, hey, I actually won. So the people that I believe are following him are in fear. And as you see, what he had, like 85 million votes, if I'm not mistaken, in the past election. So that's half, almost, the votes were like, I think it was 50 some percent Biden, 48% Trump. Half of America that voted, in my opinion, are fearful. And like I said, fear brings out things that you normally wouldn't do. So if you feel like you are in control, or if you feel like you're at a job and you feel like your boss is threatening your job, and you living a certain lifestyle and you don't want to go home to your family because of fear, you may do some things that are unethical or illegal or immoral because, hey, I'm fearful of losing my job and having to start over, or having to tell my family, or having to go back to a different lifestyle. So that fear is going to make you do stuff that you normally wouldn't do. And in this situation, I feel like that the minorities in the country are starting to gain more and more power. And a lot of the white people in America are in fear that, okay, I had the power. I was able to dictate certain things, and now it's starting to shift. And it's starting to shift, and I don't like it, and I'm scared. And Donald Trump is taking that and building that fear into them to where he can use that for his needs and for his doing, basically. So that's the way I see it. But in actuality, it's like if, of course, this is a cliche, but if we all work together, there shouldn't be any fear. But at the same time, the way the foundation of America was built on, it was built on hatred and racism, slavery. So when it starts to shift from all of these things that has been taught back in the day from their grandparents, from their parents, and handed down, it's like, well, you won't be living this same lifestyle that you are used to and accustomed to, because the power is about to shift. So now that fear is causing people to do things they normally wouldn't do, and it's being unveiled now because of social media, because of camera phones, internet. Now you can actually see it. So now it's like, okay, well, it's exposed now. So I believe that now it's just a free for all. They don't really care now.
Yeah, I mean, it does go to say, I mean, like you said, voter suppression and issues with voting has been going on probably since the first time we had the elections after George Washington was just put in office. I go back and I look at all the history and stuff like that. And I think every election you'll probably have some issues with in a minute amount of people compared to the millions of people that vote. There might be an issue. Not enough to overturn an election, as we saw in the 2000 elections with Gore and Bush, and just moving forward. And I think my problem with them is that I understand you could be upset because your candidate lost. This is how we all felt in 2016 when Hillary lost. And yes, we also walked around talking about Russians were involved in the election and stuff like that. But did you see, none of us were marching on the Capitol trying to stop Congress from confirming the electoral vote for Trump. And also President Obama went ahead and started transitioning peacefully to President Trump. This reaction from the Trumplicans has just been so ridiculous. It's so over the top. It's like, you lost. It might have been close for you in your head, but I think there's like 300, how many people in the country? 300 billion, 300, whatever. I think 150 million people voted. No, right. I think I'm getting my numbers, but I feel like only half of the country voted, and then half of the half was almost an even split. Biden got like 7 million more people voting for him. And I'm just like, okay, you still have people that wanted Trump. So it's frustrating to me. Yes, I understand you want to run around and say, my candidate lost, it was rigged. Okay, but after trials and after those inexcusable excuses of witnesses. I saw the one clip on CNN that they covered of a Fox News report where the lady came on and she had the shadow on and the little mask her voice. And she was like, yeah, there was a Kamala Harris and Biden van right outside the polling place. They had their t-shirts on, a bright band in the middle of broad daylight next to the polling place. And they were out there like tearing ballots. I'm like, really? Is that what they would do if they were going to do voter fraud? Just do it in broad daylight, wearing the shirts so everybody could see it. I'm like, these are just not credible witnesses. And so it's just sad. And so like after you go through all this, they went through the course. But the problem is Trump and his tweets. And that's why I feel like it's too late, because no matter how many times the courts threw something out, people he voted, other Republicans saying there was nothing wrong with these elections, it's a sign. He kept saying this is the most rigged election in history. He just kept churning it. So his followers couldn't move on and get past it. And yeah, so Hillary kind of was upset too about the, Russian interference, whatever. But we've all moved on and just dealt with the last 4 years of this evilness and just dealt with it. But they are like not letting it go. And so that's my problem. I feel like I shared a tweet the other day of what's her name? Tomi Lahren.
Yeah.
Something saying that, if Trump loses, their supporters will go back to work like they do every day, and Biden's supporters will go out and loot and riot. I'm like, girl, if you only knew, you got those receipts all wrong, because it wasn't. Yeah, we won, which is the first thing you got wrong in there, and then your supporters are acting crazy. I understand. It's fine to be upset that your candidate didn't win. We all have gone through that year after year with other things. Like I was sad that Beto didn't win against Ted Cruz, but I wasn't running around screaming voter fraud. And so I just feel like it's just really unnecessary at this point. I even think at this point, if Trump would even come out and say, the voter fraud thing, we're moving past it. They wouldn't even believe him because they're so caught up. They're so
Oh,
amped up. There's no way to bring him back down at this point.
yeah. Those if he was to even, which he won't, but if he was to ever say, "Oh, I was wrong," they'll just the supporters will just say, "Oh, well, somebody's making them say it, or they're threatening."
Exactly. They threatened him, or they said they must be holding a gun to his head for him to say that, because that's how crazy he has made his rhetoric become.
So, and that's where the term, I don't know when it started, in 2019 maybe, when they say keep that same energy, right? It's like now that this happened on January 6th in Capitol Hill, Tommy Lauren, all these people that were tweeting out about Trump and how BLM and Antifa are rioting and how they're animals and burning up stuff. Well, none of these people are saying anything now. Like, I was actually looking on Facebook at the people even on my page, on my timeline, and I'm like, usually these people are, when someone got shot and people were like upset because the police did not take the proper precautions and proper measures to arrest someone or to handle the situation, and people were upset because they wanted justice. So after so long, it's been several years, not just a few years, but hundreds of years, where it's been an injustice and people get fed up. Some people do riot, but for the most part, a lot of the protests in Houston were all peaceful. And so, yeah, there were some places where there was people rioting and doing violent things, but they were so loud on social media at that time, talking about animals and this and that. Now, all of a sudden, the tables turn and you don't hear a peep out of them. It's like, it's quiet as a mouse. No post about, oh, well, these people are animals, they shouldn't do that. So what that shows you is the hypocrisy of how, when it serves your purpose, it's okay. Or I can justify it by saying, well, if this hadn't been done, then we wouldn't have to do this. So it's like, it's very hypocritical to say one thing when you see another group doing it that you're not in agreement with or aligned with, and then your own group doing it, and now, okay, I'm going to sit back and not say anything. So you can see the hypocrisy just by being aware of what's being said on your timeline and in social media.
Yeah, I mean, this hypocrisy has gone too far again as well, because another thing I'll admit about the Democrats is, which I think we do pretty well, is we do condemn negative action, even if it's done within our party. I feel like we're not sycophants. I feel like, I think a lot of people who are Black Lives Matter protesters did not agree with, burning things and rioting and the violence that was going on. I understand the anger. And honestly, I mean, I'm not even sure if I had been out there, I would have been the most peaceful protester either. And then they also found actual evidence, not just hearsay on Facebook, that some of the people, like the ones in Missouri and stuff like that, were actually some white supremacists that were there doing the violence to further spur the division and just cause additional harm and make the BLM movement just look crazy. Right. And so my problem with that is like, so then we got all this flack for like being in the streets during COVID and for protesting the death of a man that we all watched horrendously on video of him slowly being killed. And I mean, we're talking about a human life here. These people are talking about fake votes for narcissists. It's not even the same comparison. And then they went out and started protesting the fact that they don't want to be inside anymore. Okay, so now y'all are out protesting too. And, but that's okay. And now we get to January 6th, where I don't even think it ever started off as a protest, because they were planning that forever. Like all the intelligence shows that they had messages on Twitter. They had groups that they had shirts made. You didn't get shirts made that morning that said Civil War January 6th. You weren't planning it. You weren't planning to go there peacefully. That's like the difference. Like, none of us had expected George Floyd to die and had a plan that, okay, now we saw that we're just going to plan and go around these cities and not crazy. They actually have this planned. And it really ticks me off when people want to compare that to a BLM protest, because the first thing I hear when I ask the very few people I still have on my Facebook, if they're, they're Trump supporters, we have that mutual friend, is why can't you condone the actions on the 6th? First thing I get is, well, that was Antifa. Number one cop out is always Antifa, who does everything apparently. Meanwhile, there were flags of neo-Nazis and all these far right extremist groups in that crowd. But apparently they get a pass because they're just going to say, oh, it was just Antifa dressed up. It was Antifa dressed up. And then instead of condemning what happened on the 6th, they'll go with, well, is it okay to burn courthouses and stuff for BLM? It's not two wrongs make a right. It's condemn bad actions. I don't care who's doing it. So the fact that you can't even sit there and condemn what those domestic terrorists did on the 6th because you're so fixated on the BLM protest, you're not even focused on the bigger picture of like, they probably got to Nancy. I watched some clips where they were calling her a bitch and saying that we're coming for you. You're such a hoe. And then they were screaming, hang Mike Pence. If you think that's a pre-planned, they were out there with a noose and gallows. Like, we are not the same.
Yeah, well, the excuses I keep hearing are it was Antifa and BLM pretending to be Trump supporters jumping in.
Oh my God,
that's ludicrous. And when people say, "Oh, well, we were going in peacefully," and that wasn't us doing these things, well, you could clearly see video of people punching glass doors. And the crazy part about it, which once again isn't really crazy, but the part about it is that they're punching and fighting and doing all these things that are on the Capitol building, that if someone that looked like me was to do that, I wouldn't have even gotten to the steps. I wouldn't even have gotten that close. But they're standing right in front of the police or security, and they're looking at them dead in the face and punching the glass, and all they're doing is standing there. Like, nothing is actually happening to them. And nobody, not even, that's why people are so quiet on social media, because none of them can say, oh, well, yeah, if someone of color was doing that, they would have just stood there and let it happen, just like they're doing now. Everybody knows that wouldn't happen. That's why people like LeBron James is very much hated by a lot of people. He even had death threats because he comes out on social media and say, hey, we're living in two different Americas. Like, this is proof. This is evidence of it. And the people that just don't want to accept it, they don't want to, I think it went out for a second. The people that don't want to accept it and they just don't want to hear it, these are people that you have to just understand that at some point you can't change somebody's mind. They're just going to think what they want to believe. They're going to live in that type of world that they want to live in. And you just have to come to an understanding that, okay, you're going to believe that and you're going to think this way regardless of what I say. But you got to do what you got to do and move forward with your plan of action and what you have to do. And those people, hopefully they'll catch on one day and realize and see the big picture. But if they don't, hey, there's nothing you can do about it, because you can't worry about what somebody else thinks. You just have to keep moving forward and do what you got to do.
And it's so true. It's just so sad. It's just like, I'm not a big fan of the police, obviously, with what was going on. But I watched that video on CNN the other day where that crowd was crushing that cop in that door. And that was like one of the hardest videos I've ever watched. They didn't care. I do believe they probably didn't know, the people in the back of the crowd that were pushing forward, that there was a guy being crushed, but there was somebody just filming it and like not doing anything about it. And you're so right. If that had been Black people, there would have been a massacre. Any brown person, especially Muslims, Hispanics, it would have been over. And there were even clips where police were taking selfies with the protesters. Police were moving them past the gates. The police that were there before that woman got shot, they had stopped trying to stop the crowd. And so I can maybe understand there was just like two of them. Maybe they were just like, we're not going to be able to do this, and let's just step aside. We're not going to be able to like take them on ourselves. But it's just still shows like they probably would have tried to open fire on a crowd of Black people. That, could you imagine like Black people running into the Capitol and doing something like that? The thing that's also just so unique to me is that these are supposed to be patriots. They claim to be patriots so much, but I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. These are the same people that love the Confederate flag and think the Confederacy were also patriots because they turned against the nation for what they believed in. And I'm just like, no, they were traitors. Just like, y'all are terrorists, and that's not how democracy and the Constitution works. You guys are fair weather patriots. You're okay with the Constitution and everything as long as it works in your favor. But as soon as anyone wants to bring civil rights and voting for women, LGBT rights and things like that. And then, having a normal president in the office that's not a psycho unhinged orange man, then you're like, no, we can't have it. We hate America. But you keep that same energy because you were so mad when Kaepernick knelt down during the anthem and y'all claimed something about, oh, you're disrespecting the flag, you're disrespecting our country. But you literally marched on DC, the capital of our country, into the Capitol building where there's some interment where heads of state across the country have actually laid in state there. And you tried to desecrate the place. Mm-hmm. So how can you be about this flag and national anthem and then you're out in the Capitol building acting crazy? And
right.
And that's the part that pisses me off is that when I get mad about people who are in denial of white privilege and that it exists, they're not only are they just in denial of white privilege, they're in denial that racism exists. I really have seen posts on a couple of my threads from some Trump supporters saying, as long as they keep y'all focused on racism, then we're never going to move past it. We're not focused on racism because we think it's fun and dandy to just play around and think about racism all day. We're focused on it because it still exists. It's not gone. There's no world in which we live in where it's just like, oh, well, we could just magically pretend racism doesn't exist and that we're not going to talk about it. And white privilege to me, I think I have a lot of woke white friends that if they're watching today, I really love y'all. Y'all have been so great through all of this. You're really open. You countered some of those people on my Facebook post, the other two white gentlemen who are on the Trump Kool-Aid. I know some white people hate the term white privilege. It makes them feel guilty, like they're paying for the sins of the past. But I mean, white privilege is what it is. White privilege is what we saw on January 6th. It is white people getting away with stuff that other people cannot just because of the color of their skin.
Right. And I grew up in a pretty diverse environment. I went to school at a predominantly white school. It was probably, I want to say 80% white, actually. And the neighborhood I grew up in was most likely probably 90% Black. So I saw both sides and I was able to see going to the same mall. If I went with people in my neighborhood to this same mall, I remember we were told we were loitering and they told us, hey, we were staying in there too long. And I want to say that maybe a month later, I was hanging out with people from high school. And of course, they were all white kids and I was the only Black kid. They were doing the same thing. And nobody said anything. The same security guy did not even notice us. We were doing the same thing we were doing, with my other friends. So I was like, I could see the difference just growing up. And then when people, like you said, say, well, racism is gone, it's not that much. It's, you can see it exists and this is proof. So sometimes, God may let things happen for a reason. Things happen for a reason. So you can see, because you can bring anybody here that's a pro-Trump and you could ask them and say, hey, if Black people were protesting and at the Capitol building, climbing walls, breaking doors and going into the offices and taking pictures on the desk, do you think we would go in the same way that all of these Trump protesters went in? And I don't even want to say protesters because, like you said, they're terrorists and they're rioters and they were doing violent acts. So, of course, nobody can come in and say, Black people could do the same thing that we just did at the Capitol building. The only thing they can say is, oh, well, that really wasn't us. And that's a cop-out. So, with that being said, it's like some things happen for a reason. And so just when it was happening, you just kind of sit back and you look and you're like, okay, well, I hope nothing terrible happens. But it's an eye-opener not for me, but hopefully for some other people that, riding the Trump bandwagon and they can see for themselves and maybe that'll change their viewpoints. Like you see some of the people in Congress actually changed their votes when they saw this happening. So you hope that it can be an eye opener for them. But this is something that's not a surprise, and it's something that has been happening years and years, and it's just being seen out in the open now.
Yeah, it was a culmination of this Trump rhetoric for forever. And again, I almost, it's not that I want to say Trump is blameless for this, because he 100% like takes the blame. But again, like we talked about at the beginning of this segment, is that Trump never changed. He was the same person. It was the people who enabled him, those very same people in Congress who now backpedaled, the ones who were signed up to, object to state votes and things like that. Some of them backed out that very day. After that happened, it almost backfired for Trump, because, I mean, it did backfire for him. That little insurrection that he incited, turned against him, because his Republican colleagues were like, enough is enough. But still, I think some of them who were more quiet, I can tolerate them a little bit more. But the Cruz, the McConnells, and the Grahams of the world, right. I'm just like, I can't even take y'all seriously right now with this backpedaling. Like, y'all had so many opportunities to stop this from happening, but you were so afraid you couldn't speak up. You enabled this man to incite this crowd. You backed his claims about voter fraud. You wanted to object to state, but we are all the way to like the last level that you can do to block an election, and they still couldn't let it go. Like the Supreme Court judges that Trump put in there, like it's just all these, they try to invalidate and delegitimize all these people that are experts in what they do, and say that these people are stupid, or they're being paid off, or if this whole election is rigged. Is the whole country against Trump? Okay, he has so many followers and so many people that voted for him. So in what world would like the same ballot that votes not for Trump, but votes for like Republican senators and congressmen would be rigged? It's that like the whole system with like everybody would have to be in on it. Like I'm talking like there's no way like something that major could have happened without everybody involved. So it's just silly. And
they never supplied any type of legitimate evidence. I haven't seen anything other than people saying this is happening and what they believe is happening and what could have happened. I have not seen any evidence. And that's why I'm like, okay, so you still want to follow this man, and he's saying all these things, all these conspiracy theories, and there's nothing to back it up. So you're just hanging on to his word, and you're legitimately a sheep, because you're just following every word he's saying. And back to what you just said, like all of these guys like Cruz and Lindsey Graham and I can't think of the other names, they were talking so bad about Donald Trump's character just 6-7 years ago. Then all of a sudden, now he's in office, and now he's this great person. Now he's this good guy, so it's a lot of flip-flopping. It's a lot of flip-flopping with politicians in general. But yeah, when you're talking about somebody's character being a bigot, saying that they lie all the time and you can't believe a word he says, and then all of a sudden, oh, well, I believe Trump. Well, it's like, okay, did Trump's character change over the last 3-4 years or something? Like, what's different? Is he a different person? No, he's been the same person, but it's clear to see that whatever their agenda is to, hey, I want to retain power. I want to stay on the good guy, on this guy's side, because he's the president now, so I need to stay on his side now. Like, those are people that I lose respect for, because they're just following that agenda, and they're just looking out for themselves, and they're clearly not looking out for the people of America.
They're not. And this hatred that they tend to also have for mainstream media, and that's another funny topic as well. We're not going to get to the Q and Antifa stuff today, so I might have to bring you back on for another segment. But the mainstream media argument is really funny to me as well. Like, I feel like, yes, some of the reporters definitely have their opinions about Trump, but they're literally showing video of things unfolding as it is. Like, it's like, how are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me it was fake news that the people on January 6th were climbing walls of the Capitol? When we're literally watching the footage live. And like, so mainstream media has kept these people honest, because they didn't make up Lindsey Graham calling Trump a racist. That was a clip he recorded during his campaign for presidency. Same with Cruz, same with all of them. And Trump has not changed. They changed. They dropped their morals. I'm almost more mad at them for being spineless and not having anything to, like, they don't even believe in their own party anymore, because they just believe in this man Trump, and they only believe in power. They don't even care about America or their constituents. They only care about getting reelected or potentially becoming the president of the United States. They don't care how damaging it is to the country. What country are you going to be president of if you let this unhinged president like release some nuclear bombs or something soon? Or like there's not going to be anything left for you to even be president of because you let so much turmoil occur. So I guess my last question for you is, after what we saw on the 6th, are you nervous for the inauguration on the 20th?
I'm not nervous personally. I do feel like that there is more turmoil that will be coming up. I believe that since Trump has been banned from all of these social media platforms, since he, sees that the end is coming closer and closer, I do believe that he is going to do something that is probably not going to go well with some other leaders in the world, or he's going to leave some type of problem or issue, so that way when the transition is happening with Joe Biden, is going to make it very difficult for him to overcome. So I believe that he's that type of person to do something like that. I'm not nervous myself. I'm just kind of like, okay, what's going to happen? And I honestly hope that either Mike Pence will invoke the 25th Amendment, or something else happens. If there's an impeachment coming up on Monday, and that goes through in a timely fashion, then hey, we it'll be over with, and we can move on with with getting the country back to normal, and so where we don't have to worry about what the president is saying. So, like I said, too little, too late with Twitter and all these sites, platforms, Facebook. Now they're banning Trump. It should have happened a long time ago, or they should have kept him in check a long time ago. But when you don't keep somebody like that in check from the jump, it just keeps building and building. And then when it's time to keep them in check at the end, you can't do it because they become a monster now.
It's like you let the cat out of the bag, the dragon's out. I mean, you can block Trump all you want, but I also just feel it's going to just incite his supporters even more, because they're just going to be, look at how technology hates our man, and they're just going to fly off the freaking handle. And I kind of get it from the tech companies. I mean, he was the president of the United States. It's like the hardest thing I've ever had to say. He was the president of the United States. So do you really want to block him? Like, he's trying to get messages out. You would think he'd be a good president, and you want him to use your platform to get good messages out to the citizens, and especially during a pandemic. But he's done nothing but undermine the pandemic, undermine democracy. And so it is too late though now. I mean, and some people are like, what's the point of trying to impeach him with only a couple of days left? I'm like, because this man is unhinged. You don't know what he can do. And he needs to just, I don't know. He just needs to be removed. And I hope Pence steps up and the senators do, if the House gets that impeachment bill up to the senators, I hope they do the right thing, or I hope Pence invokes the 25th or do something, because the man is literally unhinged. And I'm actually very nervous for the 20th. The fact that he said he's not showing, I mean, I knew he wasn't going to, I figured he wasn't going to show this for ego wise, but now I'm a little bit more skeptical if he's not showing because he thinks something's going to go down. So he's going to be in Mar-a-Lago. He's leaving the White House on the 19th. So it's pretty far away from DC. And I'm just very nervous. I know the government agencies are probably extra on top of it now, but they let January 6th slip right past them. Mm-hmm. And another reason that probably could happen was because of all that transitioning Trump was doing, firing people and stuff like that. There wasn't a smooth line of intelligence and defense because he kept firing people over the last few months and getting new people in place. So that probably allowed for this gap in intelligence not to get to where it needed to be. And so I just think they need to inaugurate these two in an undisclosed location. And I don't know, put Trump in a straitjacket somewhere. And it's not even so much him. He might his followers just might do something crazy because they already did something crazy. What's to stop them from, and they're not done. You would think that after what happened on the 6th, some people were arrested. They are just as fueled up as they were on the 6th, if not more, because they could see how easily they could get to the Capitol. Now they're like, oh, well, we got to the Capitol. What else can we do? And heaven forbid our foreign nations are probably like, dang, it's that easy to get into the Capitol in the country's capital. Okay, so that's easy peasy. We just showed the world. Just embarrassing. It was just so embarrassing. Yeah. I'm very nervous for their safety. I really am. Like, I just think we've gotten to this level of where those people are unhinged. All of them, they drink the Kool-Aid. There's no turning them off right now. So I just think there needs to be some time for them to calm down. And I think we need to do extra safety precautions and do the inauguration far away and somewhere safe. I mean, I think it's already going to be online, but I still feel nervous about them even doing it in DC. So
Right. And I think when they do take office and get sworn in, they have to show that they mean business. So, and I posted something on Facebook. It was kind of like a joke, but it was kind of for real. It was about when I was watching the Cobra Kai on Netflix, and I was like, okay, it's kind of like Cobra Kai versus I think it's Miyagi Do or something like that. And I'm like, you keep Cobra Kai is like, oh, we're gonna strike first, and that reminds me of the Trump supporters. It's like, hey, we're the ones that's big and tough. We're gonna strike first. And Miyagi-Do was kind of like, oh, okay, well, we're just gonna sit back, and if you strike, we're gonna try to block it, and that's it. But ultimately, you got to be able to say, okay, I'm gonna anticipate this, and maybe if you strike first, okay, but when we strike back, we're gonna actually deal you another blow to where we're gonna block it, but we're also gonna put you in a position where you can't strike again. And I think that's what has to happen moving forward, where, hey, the people that are doing things, regardless of which side, if they're being violent, rioting and doing things that are against the amendments, then they need to be held accountable for one, and they need to be stopped, and they need to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So if they storm the Capitol building, the way the security was, and who knows, it was tipped off, and the reaction was so slow. Who knows? Like, people just went in, so they don't have any fear of doing it again. But if they do it again, hypothetically, if it happens or something similar happens again, it needs to be swift and it needs to be forceful, where they're going to think not once, but twice, 3 times before even thinking about doing something like that again. So I think they have to have some type of reaction of, hey, we're peaceful, but if you do something, we're going to make sure you're not going to be in a position to do it again.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was what some of my frustration through November and December. I just felt like the Democrats were just kind of sitting back and letting all this craziness happen. I was like, where's our pushback? I mean, I'm watching CNN and all I hear them say is like, it's never going to work. I'm like, they're doing all these legal cases and all that. They're doing all these things. Where's our challenge? Where's our, return to this voter fraud claims and all this stuff? Like, I felt like we weren't doing anything. I also feel like that kind of led up to the 6th as well, because we kind of showed like we weren't going to do anything to push back on these Trumplicans and these extreme conspiracy theories. We're just going to let them go and then let them run. We hope they just run their course, but they didn't run their course. So we need to definitely be stronger. But yeah, so I really hope, I hope and pray. I don't wish anything terrible happens. I honestly don't want that. I'm a little nervous. I'm hoping and praying that everything goes well. I just so ready to be past this presidency and just into a new era. And if the people who want to follow Trump want to follow him to another country, or we could chop off Florida and give it to them, and they could go into Trump-clican land bliss, please just go. Just let the rest of us live our lives because we are over him. Right. But thank you so much for being on here, Clarence. Patrick, Doc.
I appreciate you thinking of me and allowing me to come on the show. I just want to tell everybody, make sure you mask up. COVID is real out there and it's getting worse. So hopefully that will, the numbers will decrease pretty soon. So just stay masked up, stay prayed up, and keep a positive mindset.
Well, thank you. Yes. Stay masked up and prayed up. And even when you get the vaccine, we're still got to get it through a lot more people. So keep being masked up. Yep. All right, guys. Well, thank you, Clarence. I'm going to let you go.
All right.
Thank you. Well, hello, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I always enjoy talking to Clarence. We'll always be talking about like politics and stuff like that, about, the things that are going on. Like on the 6th, I was like going crazy. I was at work, so I couldn't really comment. So I got off work at like 6. So then my Facebook was like flying out, like I was going extremely crazy. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this is not going on. I mean, again, I could believe it, but it was just like the initial, like, I need to get all my little emotions out about it. So I pretty much have been talking about it all week. But yeah, so thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm going to try to get these back up weekly. I'm not going to tell you a set day or time because, again, my work schedule kind of changes weekly. But this episode will be on my YouTube channel, Shasie's World on YouTube. So look for it up there. And I'll catch you guys next week. Bye.